Welcome to the Cash Flow Academy podcast. I'm your host, Andy Tanner, and I am joined by my good friends, Corey Halliday, Noah Davidson. Gentlemen, welcome.
Excited to be here.
So much going on. We got a big conflict. Everyone's talking about the implications of Israel and Iran and what that will do to oil prices, and is there contagion? Most important for our discussion is how does this affect the market, and what problems does that present to the individual investor, and how might they navigate that? How might they think about that? So it's going to be great. So like, subscribe, hit your notification bell, and if you have not done so, do this now. You can pause the video and do it. Make sure you get all your free goodies at yourinvestingclass.com. Actually, right now we have a cool download there, so make sure you go and get it. It really is. A lot of people love to watch and learn and watch and learn and watch and learn, but they struggle to get the doing part done, where they actually click a mouse and something happens and they get a stock, or they get a premium, and cash flow comes in. So if you would like help with the doing part and step-by-step how to take your first step towards stock market cash flow, go to yourinvestingclass.com for some free resources. I'll share with you my process and my big picture, really my blueprint of how you get to A to Z and get out of the rat race. So yourinvestingclass.com for sure. We'll do brief introductions for those that don't know us. I think a lot of people on the channel do, but the new people might benefit. So let's start, Noah, a little bit of an introduction, if you will.
All right. Well, I'm Noah Davidson, and once upon a time, I was a young guy working in the sales job who had an expanding family, growing family, growing expenses, and I was in a sales job that had limited income potential. I mean, I was making a living, but I wasn't getting rich. And I had started investing and I had started trading, and I had one single trade that beat my sales commission for the month.
There you go.
And
that'll do it.
I mean, I grinded hard for that sales commission too, and the trade was a couple clicks, 5 minutes a day managing it. And a light bulb went off in my head, and I thought to myself, this could be a thing for me. And I was presented, it was kind of one of those things when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And I made a decision that I was going to be a serious student of the markets. And I was presented with an opportunity to learn from a great trader, from a great investor. And it was expensive and it was a risk, and I took it. And
nice.
It blessed my life. And since then, I've been able to bless a lot of other people's lives by helping them learn the same ways of the investing Jedi and I'm not a Jedi master. I'm just a human being.
Oh no.
But,
okay, Obi-Wan.
No, it is a Jedi.
But it was amazing to me that just one single decision, and to become a student, that was really the decision. It wasn't that I'm going to go get rich and make money. It was like, this is something that can work for me, and I decided to work it.
That's interesting you mentioned that, because Buffett talks about that. He says, I was lucky to figure out what I wanted to do when I was 9 years old. And it's interesting, he didn't say I was going to go make money. He said I was going to go be an investor. It was more about who he was going to be than what he was going to have.
Yeah.
So that's kind of interesting that he made that decision very young in his life. And, when you start compounding at age 11, things tend to happen.
Well, I got started pretty young as well. I got started 25 years ago, and since I look like I'm 14, that's quite a long time ago. So, but I got started, it's crazy, a quarter of a century ago, and I've studied the markets in depth for the past 25 years, every day seemingly involved in the markets in some capacity. And so it's a fun experience to learn about different strategies that you can take to profit from these avenues. And I love the options market. I was a Series 4 option principal, the head of option trading, managed hundreds of traders at a time, and just love sharing the knowledge that I've learned.
So this is really nice to have right now, because there's always some uncertainty. As I get a little more gray here, I've seen conflicts with Iran and Israel and Iraq throughout my life, different types of war. And it does affect things, though. And so now we're seeing this again, that Middle East conflict, is it really news? There's friction in the Middle East today. I mean, that's been that way for my whole life.
Well, yeah, Hulk Hogan used to fight the Iron Sheik, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
there
it's
you
been
go.
around forever.
Yeah, there you go. So it's just, it is an interesting thing for the trader, though, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. Let's start here. Generally, you look at oil and oil futures. There's a couple of things here. There's the trade. Okay, let's buy some oil futures and try to benefit from a rise in oil. But perhaps the more important problem people face is, what does that do to the fundamentals of the economy? In that if oil goes up, that's tremendously inflationary for anything that needs to be shipped, which is everything at Costco was shipped. Lumber is shipped, grain is shipped, steel is shipped, plastics are shipped. Everything that needs gasoline or oil to go from point A to point B is impacted when oil goes up. And the question is, we've kind of had the R word, this recession word, floated for quite a while because it's been running so hot.
Oh, yeah.
Right? The economy runs a little hot. So, the question is, are we due for a pullback? Are conditions ripe for this? And so that's maybe where we start a discussion, is oil. So thoughts on oil?
Well, it's the primary lubricant of the economy. It affects the price of everything.
Yeah.
I mean, the price of eggs at the grocery store, the price of lumber at the Home Depot, the price of shipping and harvesting and everything, that fossil fuel is kind of the underpinning of everything. There's other complications that arise out of that particular situation, not just oil. Iran is a major producer of oil. They're heavily sanctioned, mind you, but they do produce and sell oil all over the world to other places that aren't necessarily under the influence of OPEC.
Right.
And so what you will likely see is a decrease in supply and demand. We typically are consuming a lot of fossil fuels in the summertime. We consume the most. And so that's kind of a supply and demand issue that's going to hit. And we are producing a lot. I mean, there's a lot of production going up, but that could really, again, affect prices. The futures shoot up on the speculation of that. It's not necessarily that the supply and demand have already kind of met a shortage of anything of that nature. It's that, I see problems coming down the pipeline, pardon the pun, and the futures prices, they start pricing that in, and so you get an immediate reaction.
Yeah, futures are up.
Yeah, and so as an experienced trader and investor, that's information that can then become actionable. And when you don't know those things, there's opportunities that you can miss that can be very, very profitable, but there's risks involved with it too. Like it's a situation, it's kind of a stimulus response type situation. This is not the first time it's happened. It's happened before. It's going to happen again at some point in time. The reactions are unique every time. And so this is where, a fundamental understanding of what works, and you combine that with a technical understanding of what works. And when you have that knowledge and that perspective lens to filter it through, you can make smart decisions, and you can see what other problems that it can create down the supply chain as well.
It's interesting to watch the people who are. You mentioned your decision to become a serious student. Most aren't. Most people aren't, and it's interesting to watch them flail or just do nothing, and they miss opportunity when they do nothing. And they also expose themselves to risk when they do nothing. Well, they often say the best thing you can do is the right thing. The second best thing you can do is the wrong thing, but the worst thing you can do is nothing.
Yeah.
And it is the paralysis of the non-serious student, because you mentioned two of the pillars, fundamentals, technicals. If you don't know that stuff, what are you going to do?
Yeah. And one of the first lessons I think that is taught to individual investors that's wrong is to just chase news stories. They think, I'm going to make money because I'm going to turn on CNBC and I'm just going to follow whatever's in the news and I'm going to chase that. And it's really tricky because a lot of times what's playing out in the news is sensationalized. They're selling newspaper, they're selling news, and so they have to make something sensationalized. But there are times when something is more significant. And so we need to be able to distinguish between, okay, is this the news sensationalizing this, or is this
eyeballs? Is this clickbait?
And a lot of times we teach that as there's known unknowns, there's unknown unknowns, there's categories that you can put it in. And those unknown unknowns that come out of nowhere, they're not planned for, they're not scheduled, and then there's all the ramifications. Those are the ones that tend to have the bigger reactions. And part of the reason that Iran is such a big player in this, they're on the north side of the Straits of Hormuz, and there's literally not millions, billions of barrels of oil that float through there that get shipped through these locations.
And everything else in the world gets shipped through there too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so there's a lot of ramifications. It's not just, is this a short-term issue? This could play out as a very long-term issue where there's talk about how the UK, the British government, sending ships towards that region, and now the US might be sending in different things. And so now you start talking about world wars, and does Russia and China see an opportunity to take advantage of something? And, how does this play out? And so as an investor, we've always got to be looking at this from the standpoint of risk reward probability, right? Where that's what we're always trading. That's what we're always investing in, and doing that with knowledge versus just, let's see if I can get lucky. It's like, some people are gambling, other people are investing. If you don't know which group you're in, you're the gambler. Be assured, right? It's like when you sit down at the poker table and you don't know who the sucker is, then it's you type of idea. Yeah. Well, if you don't really know these strategies and you're not the investor, but you're involved in the markets, you are the sucker.
Well, right? It's the choice. It's the choice people have. Really, if you're going to play the game, and you want to invest, and if you're watching this, I would imagine you want to be in that group of investors. You really have a choice. You either go advice route or you go education route. And I struggle often. What am I going to do about it? It's not my problem. But I struggle to help people who have the problem distinguish those two, because I don't think they really grasp how different those worlds are. Your advice by listening to people on TV or a financial advisor, you're really constrained when someone else is telling you what to do. What is the difference between advice and education? That's something to ponder. When I say these domains are very distinct, and I say many people don't know the difference, do you know the difference? Within yourself, many people say, well, yeah, sure, I know the difference. Well, what is it? Education is as an education advocate, I guess, if you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. But I do feel that way, is that I really loved how Noah started the podcast off by saying it started with a decision to be a serious student. That's the real decision, because this stuff is pretty easy to navigate from where we sit. My blood pressure isn't that high. It's more about, okay, where is the opportunity? It'll be somewhere. Exactly. Once I determine what that is. I think the escalation is probably, as a risk manager, we look in terms of what might happen, not what we think will happen. Yeah, that's a real big difference with probability. And I think that's the most intriguing thing about it. I think there's two intriguing things that can come out of this. Number one is economically, what does this do, and how does it affect oil as we started? Does it put pressure on the U.S. economy? Does it help us go towards a pullback a little bit because things are running hot? Prices are still really high. It is hard for people. And I think even without a conflict, the high prices, they're not going to retreat. Maybe the pace of inflation has slowed, but we're not going back to pre-COVID prices.
We might not be inflating at 10%, but the 10% a year that we did inflate, those
there.
Prices don't get rolled back.
It's still there.
So not only did we have the 10% jump in 1 year, but now we're still stacking about 3% on top of that every year. So if somebody's not growing their investments to outpace that 3%
lose.
inflation plus, they're constantly getting further behind.
That's it. That's interesting.
Well, I had to throw this. And if they're in the advice culture, they get to pay fees
on top of
that, which makes it even harder to stay up.
Yeah.
If you're throwing 1% in fees, you got inflation plus 1%, and it's devastating.
All right, so you're talking about the news, chasing the news, buy the rumor, sell the news. There were rumors floating that there was going to be a conflict. There was, they're telling people to evacuate.
They knew it,
et cetera, et cetera. So that's the rumor, right?
Trump goes, well, we're trying diplomacy. We don't want to do it the other way. But,
I don't want to have to do it.
We might have to do it the other way. They go, what's the other way? He goes, well, it's the other way.
Yeah. And then, so I see the rumor, and you can take action on that. That's something you can do. Then as the news broke, I had 2 random conversations from 2 different people. And one was from a student of ours named Dave, who said, boy, I'm glad that and then, had an action that he took. And like he saw the news and was able to react to it quickly.
Yeah.
And had knowledge and training and education behind him. The other one was from just an average person, a consumer, who said, "Oh no, that means the price of oil is going to go up." They understood it tacitly, like, "Oh yeah, that's going." But they did. All they could see is that's going to make everything more expensive for me.
Yeah, they couldn't turn it into money.
And so I could see that they could see it was a problem. And over here, this guy's like, "I have a solution." And so, those 2 different worlds. I mean, the difference between the 2 people is not they're both kind of middle-aged men, both from similar demographics. I mean, a lot of things in common, but the difference between them was education.
Always is. So let's talk more about before we go to our break. The first thing was the economic fallout. That's really what most people are looking at right now is the economic fallout. The political fallout, that's a more interesting and a more dangerous conversation. Iran, I don't know much. I got this opportunity to learn more about Iran. It seems like they had 3 or 4 things they did. They took out some leadership. That was a big deal. They apparently degraded one of their nuclear facilities, but that thing's underground pretty far. So were they able to really disable that? Netanyahu, is he trying to? You got to be careful. That's a big nation. They got a lot of people. I think the thing that is kind of unsettling is from what I hear, they don't like their leadership. That the regime is not popular there, and that the people don't like this. I mean, I don't know where the people stand, but it destabilizes.
Yeah.
When you create a leadership vacuum, it's very destabilizing for a country that large. I mean, what do they have? 80 million people that live there.
90 million.
90 million, 88 million, something like that. Much more populous than Israel, but their GDPs are comparable. So you can tell that there's a lot of people struggling and unhappy when the GDPs are comparable with a population that's probably 9-1, 10-1, something like that. I don't know how many people live in Israel, like 8 million, probably something like that.
Yeah, probably 5-1 at least.
So the political fallout, I think, is the story that we'd want to be more prepared for.
Yeah.
Because it can cause other stuff to happen. The contagion. Do you see any of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the biggest risk that people foresee because, like you said earlier, the bombings back and forth is nothing new. Actually, Israel has bombed Iran and Iran has bombed Israel before. So this is not new news from that standpoint. But every time there's another bombing, there's another situation, it's the possibility of further dominoes, right? And so other countries pick sides in many cases, right? Switzerland doesn't, but everybody else does. Yeah. And so you have, that's where a lot of the risks and things come in is, well, could this evolve into more conflict? We're already dealing with Russia-Ukraine conflict, and now there's other potential conflicts. And I think the good news for the U.S. is that we don't get a lot of our oil from the Middle East. And actually the U.S., one of the best things that has happened in terms of oil prices for the U.S. is the fact that we've been able to produce a lot of our own oil.
Yeah.
And our neighbor Canada is actually a big trade partner
will
and
do
so
well
forth.
there,
Yeah. So when we look at oil from our segment of the world, not as big a deal. But when you start looking at Europe and some of those other countries, I mean, oil prices around the world could certainly go higher. We've seen them.
Yeah.
Right now, I think oil as of today was 78, 79 a barrel for WTI. We've seen it at $147 a barrel, so almost twice what it is right now. So there's room for oil to go up, most definitely, and that's always a pinch on the consumer. That's always it's going to hurt margins for most companies. Most companies are not in the business of selling oil. Most are in the business of consuming oil, so that would increase their expenses.
When we come back from break, we'll talk about some trades, and then, more importantly, we'll talk about how a person positions themselves knowledge-wise. I mean, there's two questions that I would ask when we come back from break. I'll give you guys a chance to think about them. One of them is an advice question. One of them is an education question. And when we come back, I'm going to ask you, what advice do you give in terms of, what's a trade? What's a trade on this? But more importantly is I'm going to ask, what would you study? And it's interesting because, I used to, remember I was on the Rich Dad radio show with Robert one time, and he had this little segment always called Ask Robert, where he, answers questions. And I will tell you, it's when I say people don't understand the difference between the culture of advice and the culture of education, there's one question, maybe someone will hear me say this and actually ask that question. If they did, Robert, I think would be thrilled. I don't know, we'll see, maybe I'm wrong. But people often say, if you had $10,000, what would you buy right now? Is that an education question or an advice question? I've never heard anyone call in and say, Robert, what are you studying right now?
Yeah.
What are you trying to learn right now? What do you think the smartest thing to be studying right now is? And you can see one person sees safety and being told what to do, and the other person sees safety and knowing what to do.
Yeah.
And in their knowledge, where the knowledge is the safe haven instead of, the trade is the safe haven. So we'll do both. I'll ask you to throw out a trade. What trade would you advise with this? What are some possibilities? But I'll also ask you, what do you think you should learn? So I'll give you a moment to think about that, and then we'll come back and we'll ask those questions after break.
I am learning a lot, and it's easy to understand. Andy is fun. Andy's very enthusiastic to watch. He makes it a lot simpler to understand. I'm really benefiting from everything that he's teaching. I think the most valuable thing I've learned from Andy so far is the fact that it's not scary and it's easy to do.
Anybody can do this with the right amount of education, effort, and willingness to learn. You can learn it too. Andy, thanks for making this simple. Thanks for making this fun. Thanks for pouring your heart into this. Thank you very much.
We're back with the good guests of mine, good friends, Noah Davidson, Corey Halliday, and this is where we make investing fun, simple, and real at the Cashflow Academy. And before we went to break, we're talking about, oil, Middle East, conflict, war, all those problems that seem to just plague that part of the world constantly. Isn't it interesting that, you never hear Australia,
Yeah.
They're so far away.
I mean,
It'd be really
New Zealand invaded someone, it's just, it's interesting how that area of the world has such strife and the poor people there.
Yeah.
I think about the Gaza situation and the famine and these children that are, kid's 6 years old and he has nothing to eat. It's a huge humanitarian problem that is a guy who, kind of a big teddy bear type of guy. It hurts my spirit to see the humanitarian cost of I just feel like it's antiquated. Maybe I'm naive to it, but boy, can't we just get along?
Right.
Who was it said that? Was it Rodney King or someone that said, "Can't we all just get along?" or something like that?
I think that sounds familiar.
Can we just get along here?
Right.
Can we work this stuff out? Do we really have to do this? So, neither here nor there. It is what it is, and it's as an investor, What's the trade? Let's start with you, Noah. You're going to trade. Are you going to do a technical analysis oil trade on this?
Well, I mean, yes, you can, and I've done that. I think that there's even beyond just the price of oil with this. We talk about the awful side of, the humanitarian side of war. That again, it's challenging to be a little bit dispassionate about it because it is so heart and gut wrenching.
Yeah.
But is it okay to talk about the other side of that, where one of the reasons we consistently have wars is because they're wildly profitable?
Yeah, wars. There's a lot of money in war.
Yeah. And the conspiracy theorist in me.
What do you mean that 90% of your body?
You've never heard about?
Actually, there's this little conspiracy theorist.
I don't know
in
if you
me.
guys have heard about the military-industrial complex.
It's like there's this little conspiracy theorist, and we're like, that's your whole body, dude.
I don't know about that. I got a tinfoil shirt.
No, it's like a tinfoil shirt. It's like he should say, there's this little rational part of me that's saying, that's fighting the conspiracy. You got that
if they
backwards.
wouldn't keep coming true, I probably wouldn't be
Right.
so deep down this. But no.
You'll say you can't say that. You'll say, hey, you put, we're fresh. Boy, you can put a man on a moon. You can't do this. No, I'll be like, you really think we landed on the moon?
It's a good thing the Earth is flat. So
I know, right?
I
know, right? No, there's an old adage: if there's going to be a war, you invest in. You don't pick sides. You invest in the company that manufactures the bullets.
Absolutely.
I mean that's true for what's going on in AI right now. Like, you're looking at an AI race, which has tremendous military implications. This is an arms
off the chart
race.
Yeah.
So what that means for me is semiconductors. You could invest in probably any one of the top 5 semiconductor companies, or in a semiconductor holders ETF, or in just the tech sector in general.
Yeah, or you can just invest in business because whoever wins is going to benefit.
Right.
Like, does it really matter that you picked Google over Yahoo? No. What you do is you pick business because they're all going to benefit from whoever would have won.
So, I got.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
I mean, Kraft Heinz is going to do better, regardless of who wins. So you can just pick business.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I think that's a play right there. I've got positions on Taiwan Semiconductor, NVIDIA, AMD.
All of them.
And so those are some of the bigger chip makers that are on the cutting edge of the AI. Then I think another conversation we had recently was, AI and those chips that require so much power, the demand for power is increasing, and so the nuclear uranium play, I think, is in that.
Oh, you're still in my spot.
I know, right? So I'll just bump. You can set. We'll spike that later.
Exactly.
That was a good pick.
I'm about to
some
spike
advice.
that one.
There was some advice.
All right,
I took.
then I'll come back. Yeah.
The uranium CCJ.
Yeah.
That's at new all-time highs right now.
You brought that up here on the podcast, actually, and I went and bought shares. So thanks for the advice.
Which thank you, by the way. It's been awesome.
Yeah, it's been awesome. And Constellation Energy continues to make new deals with the big tech
food, clothing, energy,
companies.
right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You need energy to live in this world. So any type of energy play.
And uranium, I mean, it's obviously had a bad rap, it's had a bad reputation and so on, but actually a cleaner energy, getting away from things
nuclear.
like coal and so on.
Is it nuclear or nuclear? Was it
Oh,
Bush?
with
How-
W?
Nuclear.
Nuclear.
Nuclear. Nucleusler.
Yeah. Now try and spell it.
So what's the I can't spell my name. What's the trade like in Menor Club? What kind of trades are you looking at right now?
Well, we've got those going on already. Talked about the defense sector, and we've got some small positions in defense sector
interesting.
stocks.
Where's Boeing at? Has that been hammered enough? Has that made a
I
comeback?
haven't looked at Boeing. They've seemed to have a whole litany of other problems.
That's the thing. I mean, I've always looked at Boeing as someone that's going to eventually figure it out and maybe surge
Eventually.
a little bit.
Eventually.
Well, that's another one that we actually talked about. Remember, we talked about it when it was you actually executed a trade to close your bearish position or something while we were
While
live
we were
on
talking,
the
yeah,
podcast.
it's like, okay.
But we were talking about how Boeing was in that dogs of the Dow.
Yeah.
And it's a prime example of how people get caught up in the news and it can hurt them, because Boeing had been in this tailspin, but they'd gone through. Well, yeah, that's probably not the right thing to say.
Boeing
Yeah.
had been in a tailspin.
I meant the stock going down, but that's a bad one. I didn't mean for that to happen. But
Oh, we're going to get canceled there.
Unfortunately,
But
that one came off.
Canceled. Done. That's awesome.
Well, that one was applicable
This
to them,
segment's really
unfortunately.
crashing
But,
and burning.
Unfortunately.
This is terrible.
Yeah.
but the stock has zoomed back since, because, again, they went through that whole process of restructuring, new CEO. And this is the difference, where when we talk about things, we talk about what are 4 pillars. What are the opportunities? Well, it comes back to, we want the producers. And that's talking about fundamentals. We want business that's going to benefit, business that's going to grow, business that's going to prosper. And then we can use the technicals and the charts to put on our trades and time our entries and our exits. But we understand that timing is somewhat fickle, so we'll give ourselves margin of safety. That's where options can come in. I can put on a trade. We always teach our students there's 5 directions that a stock can go. If you didn't know that they can move in 5 directions, learn about that. But basically, we could put on a trade that says, okay, only this 16% probability can hurt us. The other 84% probability of where the stock can be, which is sideways, down a little bit, up a little bit, up a lot, those are all good outcomes.
By the way, I love the 5-direction trade in times like this, especially if you have a oil pop. Your 5-direction trade is a nice trade to learn about, but it's for serious students only. There's a club. It must be frustrating for some listeners because they haven't joined the club yet. There's a club of jargon, of in the know, where you can have intelligent conversations and the information's actionable.
Yeah.
A person outside that club is just going to, this is edutainment, right? Yeah. But I love the 5-direction trade when there's an extreme.
Yeah.
Because it gives you options.
Yeah.
No choices. Well, and that's one of those things where I could present Corey with information on any economic, technical, fundamental potential outcome. He can think through every probability, every risk, every reward. He could think through the 5 types of directional trades you could take. And he could, based off of the conditions and the criteria and everything you see in the market, structure a position where he was satisfied with the potential risk compared to the reward and the probabilities. And so when you have that skill set and that knowledge, and again, we have like a mentor club, by the way, which is pretty cool. And in that, we've been talking about some of the defense sector stocks and structuring trades around it. We've been using some leverage with options, legging into positions, doing some pretty cool things where we've taken small amounts of capital and used those to generate big returns.
Let me compare and contrast that to, I think it was about 10 years ago. This must have been 2015, somewhere around there. And I play early morning basketball. And I remember this is when oil, it had peaked at 147 a barrel, and then it had started to go down. And it first broke back below 100. And I remember I went to early morning basketball and I played with a dentist. And he knew that I was in the financial markets. He said, hey, how do I buy oil futures? I know oil is going back up.
Don't get me going on this.
And first of all, he didn't study the markets in depth, but it was, hey, I know this is the outcome. I have no idea how to profit from it, but just tell me real quick.
Give me a couple of tips.
Yeah, tell me real quick.
This stuff drives me
even
crazy.
Worse, this was around Thanksgiving time. Literally the same day, so that's on a Thursday morning. We played early morning basketball. I go to a family Thanksgiving thing, and one of my brothers, who again doesn't know anything, and he said, man, how do I buy oil futures? How do we profit from this? And I was
the lack of respect. Don't get me going, because the lack of respect
for what we do and what we know
for what he's done. I mean, it's like me saying, hey, I think I'm going to remove one of my incisors and do my own root canal tonight. You got any tips on how to do that?
That's
or
right.
hey doc, I'm going to replace my bicuspid valve tonight.
That's what I
got
should
any
have.
tips before I hop in?
Yeah, that's what I should have
After
said
your
as
8
a
years of med
rebuttal.
school?
As a rebuttal to the dentist, I should have said, "Hey, I'm just going to start pulling some
Yeah.
teeth. How do I go about that?"
Yeah, I'm going to do a root canal on my,
on myself,
incisors or whatever. How do I do that?
On my wife. How do I do that properly?
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
But that comes back to what Noah said. Okay, so that's the trade. So your trade is give me a trade, and then I'll ask the education question.
Drone technology. I think the Ukrainian war has demonstrated that some of the ideas we have about warfare are changing rapidly.
Boy, you've seen those little tiny drones that can just right through the
So
forehead. man.
AVAV and KTOS are high on my list. Other than that, I also like Palantir. It's a different problem technology. That's more of a domestic population management tool is probably the best way of putting it.
What's your trade?
Yeah, I still like the uranium play. That was kind of where I went in the energy patch, was not so much directly related to oil, but again, if oil prices go higher, that's even more reason to go to some alternative energy sources.
It's an AI
right?
play because
Yeah.
it's an AI play.
You get all the benefit of the big tech companies that want to build out their uranium plants.
Yeah.
But then also there's always competition in commodities. So the same way that oil prices going up, well, you might be able to get your energy in some other capacity using some other fuel. It's like, it's similar to how if chocolate got too expensive, maybe people will buy peanut butter or whatever. So when you look in the commodity space, it's not a perfect, this one competes with that one, but there is some competition there for energy. And I just think uranium is not going away. I think its growth days are still in front of it. So I think we talked about that a year or so ago.
Semiconductors, drones, uranium.
And I do like the semiconductors because everything runs off semiconductors. They're just,
I'm
that's
tempted
been a play
to do,
for a long time.
we used to trade the USO before it was garbage. And I'm tempted to do a 5-direction type of trade on oil. I'm tempted to do that as my trade. You could do a very safe credit trade where you got paid to watch that move 4 out of 5 directions. And I think that'd be a high percentage. I think it'd be a high probability trade.
And it's good because you have all the elements of benefit. You have higher volatility now with the conflict. You have prices that are moving a little more than their ATR, so that pumps up the liquidity and that pumps up the nervousness in those options. So as an option seller, you could get to collect bigger premiums. And
so isn't it interesting that people would be excited to get the tip? Okay, Noah says go buy drones, right? Corey's going to buy uranium, Andy's going to do a trade on oil. That's what people want. They want fish. Very few people have the attitude. I'll tell you what's interesting about becoming a serious student. And I loved how you opened the show with that, I remember I was sitting on a beach with Robert and Kim somewhere in the Caribbean. I can't remember what island it was, St. Thomas or somewhere. And we had gone on a cruise, and Robert was just like, he hated it, and he's sitting on this beach. And, he's like, I grew up in Hawaii, and it's interesting that one man's paradise is another man's prison, because he wanted to go do something. He didn't want to sit around and look at people like me with their shirt off. He wanted to go do something. He wanted to go do something else. So one man's paradise is another man's prison. And I often say this, one man's burden is another's opportunity. And when I think about education, like I get excited about food.
So do I.
Consuming things, right? I look forward to, my family's a big pizza. We make pizza a lot, and we just work our butts off to make the best we can possibly make. And when you guys come over, I destroy it. But we care about food a lot, and we look forward to the family meals. It's something we anticipate to ingest and be fed that way. That's the way I feel about education. It is so interesting that your doctor, lawyer, engineer, whoever went through all this school that they hated to get a job that they hate, and they're like, no, I don't want to learn anything. Just give me some tips. It's almost like they get ruined because they've eaten so much crappy food. Yeah. Where when you see, financial education is delicious. And it is interesting. You can really do a test. For example, we have education that's free. We'll say, hey, drop by yourinvestingclass.com for free education, free food, life-saving medicine, food that's nutritious and helpful and good. And people are like, oh, that's a lot of work. One man's opportunity is another man's burden. And so when you look at the education question, that's a really interesting way to approach it is, as you think about how you approach your investing, do you look at education as something that's like, oh, I have to really go, I got to show up to Mentor Club and listen to Noah, or is like, I can't wait for this week's Mentor Club. So I'm going to ask you, what should I be? I'll ask the more important question. What would you study right now? If you were trying to read the minds of the listeners, what would you recommend people get smarter at?
Knowing thyself. This is a lesson that I've gotten from you and from Robert. The term education and the Latin root words educe, which means to bring forth, to develop, to draw out that which is within us. When I study trading and investing, I'm constantly studying, but I'm also studying myself and my temperament, because I've noticed in myself that sometimes I feel the greed monkey.
That's thalassemolitis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to
know thyself.
I'm going to go do this. And so, yes, I study technical analysis. Yes, I study fundamental analysis. Yes, I study intermarket analysis. In all of that context, the biggest the one linchpin is me and how I am interpreting what I've learned and putting it into practice. And so the more I know, the more I can grow. The more,
Yeah, I have met the enemy, and he is me.
Yeah.
Right. I am my own worst enemy. Know thyself. It's a caution. It's great line by Thalassemolitis. What would you be studying right now?
Yeah. So I think when you look at the markets and the things that we talked about, there's a lot of concerns. Of course, we have in the U.S. rising debt, and interest rates have gone up, and now we're paying trillions in interest. And so there's going to be issues down the line. But the one thing that you actually can control is your own financial statement. I can't really do anything to change the path that the U.S. is on. I can vote. I can try to educate other people about this or that, but I'm really not going to change that course. That is on its path, and I'll do my part to try to change and improve it, but I'm, going to have very little impact there. But I have a massive impact on my own financial future. The decisions that I make today will impact me and my family for decades to come, for better or worse, right? And so anyone that's thinking about the path that they're on is the path that there's really two groups. There's those that are on the path where they're going to have a successful financial future. They're going to be able to do the things that they enjoy, that they want to do. They're serious students. They're going to be on the path to retire and not have to work until they're 90 years old. And then there's this other group that's never gotten serious about any of it, and they're just hopeful that one day they'll hit the lottery or something great will happen that'll solve all their problems. Yeah. And it's that, and I think the big thing is that what you teach, at yourinvestingclass.com, it breaks it down. It says, here's your income, here's your expenses, here's your assets, here's your liabilities. Here's how you actually check this to see which path I'm on. And if you can't answer which path you're on, you might be on the wrong path because you're not measuring, you're not really following those numbers and seeing for yourself.
I heard was two things. Number one was know thyself, that instead of going for advice, what should I do, who should I become? Yeah. And then I heard learn to control your financial statement. Now, that's a really profound idea. Is if I understand that it doesn't really matter what Greece or Italy or Spain or Venezuela, their financial statements are, what does mine look like? Yeah. And if I can't control it, if I look at it and I don't like it and I don't know how to change it, that's the problem that
Yeah.
I'm faced with. Like I have a financial statement that isn't healthy. I don't know how to move it. One of the great things of the Cash Flow Academy have is, we have a great, CEO here. It's not me. That's not my deal. I teach. But our CEO is fantastic because he knows how to change something.
Yeah.
He understands what a key performance indicator is, right? He just gets that. And on a personal level, I need to know how I can change my own financial statements. So when I see, Israel just attacked Iran or retaliated or preemptive or however you want to frame it, how do I take that and actually put that information in my financial statement in a meaningful way, in a way that's smart? How do I control my financial statement? And that is, you hit it right in the head. That's exactly why we tell people go to yourinvestingclass.com, because that's the first lesson. Before I can learn the 5-direction trade, before I'd even let someone in the mentor club. What, you're going to let someone in the mentor club that doesn't at least have the basics? It'd be above their pay grade, unfortunately. So that's really is a first step to get going. I would tell people this. If you were to ask me what to study, I don't even know if I'd choose a topic. I'd choose a person. I've said this on this podcast probably 10 zillion times. I'll keep saying it. When my wife and I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, the first reading, we thought it was a book about assets and liabilities. Oh, quit buying the liabilities. Let's buy the assets. Let's build this. But really, upon further review, I realized it was really a book about mentorship. I mean, look at the cover. Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It's the story of someone who had a biological father who was more of an academic enthusiast about get good grades, get a job. And then he had another father who cared about financial knowledge and bequeathed that knowledge to him and mentored him and chewed him out and was a taskmaster of sorts when he said, okay, you want to learn? And it was interesting because you talk about being a serious student. Most people wouldn't do it. He told, all right, Robert, you want to be a student? Come to my store and work for free. What? I thought I was going to learn financial education. He goes, it's a Mr. Miyagi moment, isn't it? Yeah. I say you do, no question, wax on. Go wax the cars. Well, I'm busting my ass here waxing cars. I thought I was going to learn how to punch and kick, right? Remember that?
Yeah.
In the old Karate Kid? Oh, come work for free. And he's like, why do I have to work for free? He says, well, you're learning to be an entrepreneur because that's what entrepreneurs do. They work for free. They just work. Yeah. Whether they get paid or not, they're going to build something. So you got to know how to work for free. You're learning a very difficult lesson. That's a serious student and a serious teacher. So if you want to be a serious student, find your rich dad, whether it's us or someone else. Find somebody who is that person that will take you by the hand, walk you through it step by step, help you overcome those demons in that personal development you need. So when Israel makes an attack and oil goes up, the 5-directional trade, or how, the different ways. I mean, you can get paid. I kind of like the idea of, if with those prices a little higher now, I like the idea of selling a put to acquire some more of that. Yeah. Which is the same way, by the way, I bought some shares, but I also sold puts to acquire those shares. Well, it went up, so that those puts to acquire the shares just lowered my cost basis on the ones I bought. Yep. Essentially, is the way I look at it. So yeah, it is always on the Cash Flow Academy. If you tune in, it's about education, because we are an academy. We are education advocates, and the objective really is for someone to say, gee, I do want to learn more. I watch this because it helps me get clear on who I want to be, and hopefully you become a more serious student. That's really your choice after watching this. It isn't really about Israel and Iran today. It's about you. It's about, do you have the ability to take that information and turn it into cash? If you do, fantastic. If you don't, well, how do you become that person? And so great stuff.
Well said.
That's what so you're going to learn about yourself, get those demons covered.
I'm an enigma and a mystery all wrapped up into one. But the more I study, the more I realize it all comes back down to my own internal locus of control. and how I think and how I feel and how I reconcile those two. And again, you got the greed monster, you got the fear monster.
Yeah.
And, fear might keep you on the sidelines, afraid to do something. Greed might have you going in headlong without thinking about things. And if you can use, this is actually one we came up with from the Mentor Club, is my monkey brain versus my sage brain. And when I can get the monkey brain under control that just wants the instant gratification and use some frontal lobe and forethought and wisdom and experience, then now you're starting to get some traction and do good things.
Boy, we better not let that out, because my kids will say, Dad is the monkey brain. Dad is the monkey brain. Guys, thanks so much for your wisdom. Thanks so much for your mentorship, and thanks so much for your friendship. I am absolutely not making the trades that I know how to make without you guys over the years. And I've had so much good help and good learning from you guys, and I'm excited to share my friendship with you, with the world. So you've been watching and listening to the Cashflow Academy podcast. It's fun. It's pretty simple, and everything we teach is real. We'll see you next time.